Playoffs, yep, that's what we're talking about on today's episode because the college football playoff has come out and we have some things to say. Stay tuned. Welcome to our TSTV College Football Playoff Special, and I'm extremely excited to have two great panelists alongside me. To my left, I have Gabe Letcher. Gabe, how you doing?
Good, and you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking. Excited to talk about Michigan, Alabama, Cincinnati, and Georgia all being in. Harrison?
Yeah, I'm excited. A lot of good games yesterday, so excited to get into it.
Absolutely. And now I've listed the four teams just so you would know who was in, just in case you didn't know, but pretty much at this point everyone knows. But just to cover again, we're going to have a little full screen graphic. In the first game, in the Cotton Bowl, we have Cincinnati facing Alabama. And then in the Orange Bowl, we have Georgia and Michigan facing each other. The first game we're going to break down is the underdog going up against the evil empire we all want to see be struck down. That's Cincinnati. And in this game, I think it's fair to say that Cincinnati's a huge underdog. The line has already come out. They're a 13.5-point underdog against the Tide. And do they really have a legitimate shot at winning the championship and beating the Tide this year? Harrison?
No, I mean, I don't think so. They are the first Group of Five program to reach a college football playoff. But Alabama, if you watch the game yesterday against Georgia, they beat them by 17 points. A defense that Georgia only let 6.9 points per game before the game against Alabama. And you saw Bryce Young and Jamison Williams pick apart the defense over the top and around the perimeter. So I don't give them a legit shot, obviously, but the Bears, I'll give them a fighter's chance. Why? Well, they have the two of the best cornerbacks in Kobe Bryant and Ahmad Gardner. And so if you have the Tide go one-dimensional and let Bryce Young throw, you got to test your luck, but you do have the best two of the best cornerbacks in the league. So I'll give them a fighter's chance, but not much of a chance.
Yeah, it's really hard, especially when you're going up against Alabama. They've just been so good for so long. But as you mentioned, Sauce Gardner, he's a pretty good player, and Kobe Bryant's very experienced as well. I think that's one aspect where Cincinnati can possibly exploit them. Gabe?
I mean, when you play Alabama, you're essentially playing an NFL team, and there's just no way that since he's beating them, Alabama, they're my pick to win it. Alabama got it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where it's hard to bet against Bama just because they've been so good for so long. I think really a lot of Cincinnati fans are realistic about their expectations at this point and just want their team to compete in this game. And there is one concern, though, just because Alabama struggled a little bit against Auburn, and they did lose to Texas A&M. Mm-hmm. With them being a little inconsistent this year, and especially after the Georgia win, are they going to be the unstoppable juggernaut in their game against Cincinnati, or are they going to be the team we saw against Texas A&M? What do you think, Gabe?
They're not going to be the team we saw against A&M. I believe that A&M game was important for them because it tested them. It gave them a little bit of adversity, which is something the Bama program isn't used to. So now we're looking at a squad that has an advantage most other years they didn't have. We're looking at a squad that's gone through a loss and understands what that's like, and now they know that they don't want to have that again. So I think this team is going to be even hungrier and even harder, and they're just going to be unstoppable.
That's a good point because strength of schedule is so important around this time of the year because even if you have a loss, if it's a good loss that made you better, it can actually help you grow later on the road. And Gabe, that's a really good point you brought about just having that adversity, that hunger. Nick Saban kind of talked about the Rat Boys and Alabama actually being an underdog against Georgia. Harrison?
No, right. I agree with you, Gabe. The thing about Alabama and about just college football in general is like you need to peak at the right time. And the best teams win the championship while they're extending towards the end of the season. And that is exactly what Alabama just did and are doing after beating a Georgia team, like I said, by 17 points with contributions from Mechie and Williams. And, we talked about the Auburn and their tight game with Arkansas as well. Alabama is battle-tested, but football comes down to quarterback play and coaching, and they have the best quarterback right now in Bryce Young, and they have the best coach of all time in Nick Saban. So I think the unstoppable juggernaut has returned, and look for Alabama to win it all.
We're roll tide here on today's show. Now let's move on to the other game between Georgia and Michigan. And Michigan, it might be their year. They finally beat Ohio State. They got over the hump. They won the Big Ten championship. Georgia is still trying to get over their own hump with their losses against Alabama. But both of these teams are very similar because they're built on defense.
Right.
And Michigan has a really strong defense with Hutchinson and Ajagabo on the defensive line. And with Georgia, you have Jordan Davis, who's one of the scariest players in all of college football. So it's not going to be an offensive slugfest necessarily, but a defensive one. Which defense is the better defense in your
The two defenses, Georgia's defense is only averaging 4.2 yards per play, whereas Michigan is letting up 4.7 yards per play. At the end of the game, that leads Michigan to allow over 50 more yards per game than Georgia. So if you really think about it and you really evaluate the defenses, the two are not in the same league.
I'm just saying, Bryce Young threw for 400 yards against that Georgia defense.
Yeah,
Come
no,
on.
that's true.
Come on. Georgia, have you seen the SEC East quarterbacks? Emory Jones. Come on. Michigan's defense is pretty good. But Gabe, all joking aside, you're definitely right. Georgia's defense, some people were calling it the best college football defense of all time this year. And even then, there were points in the Alabama game that they were able to slow them down. So I think that is one area where you could argue they have a possible edge. Harrison?
I think Georgia's defense is better. Well, they are playing better offenses, I think, in the SEC. But also, I'm not going to say that they have the best defense of all time, because if you saw the Alabama game, they got exploited over the top and on the perimeters all game. So what I think makes Georgia's defense lethal is the interior alignment and their ability to win in the trenches, which is going to be huge for this run and gun kind of game that we're going to watch between the two teams. But if I had to pick one school which had the better defense, I would definitely say Georgia.
Yeah, Dogs are looking really strong this year, and also we know that they get tested a little bit more in regards to the SEC speed, because you're going up with Georgia. They have George Pickens on their roster, who's one of the best receivers in college football, and really the only time Michigan has faced an elite receiving core this year was when they faced Ohio State, and even then C.J. Stroud still played pretty well. That being said, Michigan and Georgia are almost the same team. They're both defensive powerhouses. They both have quarterbacks who are not elite, but solid. Stetson Bennett has his moments. Cade McNamara didn't throw for 3,000 yards this year, but he's a good game manager. So with that being said, how does one team rise above the other? Let's start with Harrison on this one.
So I think both teams, like you said, their identity is the defense. At Michigan, their DNs are Hutchinson and Abajo. They have a combined 25 sacks on the year, while Jordan Davis for Georgia is the man in the middle. Defensive line is obviously the strength of the Georgia Bulldogs team. Both teams are coming in 12-1, but I have to believe that this year, a year where Michigan beat Ohio State for the first time in recent memory, and they just beat the brakes off of Iowa, winning the Big Ten championship. I gotta feel good about the momentum that Coach Harbaugh and their entire Michigan team and their defense has. So I have to go with Michigan here on this game.
That's a bold take, because it's definitely two teams that are so evenly matched. Michigan definitely has all the momentum right now, but will Georgia come out angry is the question.
Right.
Gabe, what do you think will happen in this game?
Well, Michigan's offense is ranked 18th in the nation, whereas Georgia's is ranked 27th. Michigan has 2,910 rushing yards in the season. So really the matchup is going to be Michigan's rushing offense versus Georgia's defense. Georgia's defense only allowed 2.6 yards per rush. So if we really do the math here, it looks like Georgia is going to have a field day against Michigan's rushing attack.
Absolutely, you're right. That was one thing where Ohio State, the reason they lost this year was they couldn't stop the run game, and Hassan Haskins just really was able to run all over their defense. But we know that one thing you can't do against Georgia this year, even if they did get exploited in the passing game a little bit, you cannot run the ball against that defense. So I think that's going to be a core strength they face. And coming up next, we give you our Heisman picks, and we also discuss ways to make the college football playoff better. Stick around, you won't want to miss it. Welcome back into our show, and I feel like, guys, is it just me, or every year, for some reason, for like the past 3 years, somebody is mad when they're talking about the college football playoff? Now, this year it seemed like it was a little bit more set in stone, but do you think the committee got it right? Why or why not? Harrison, let's start with you.
Yeah, so they got it right with the teams, but they got it wrong with their rankings or the seeds. So let's start with why it's right. I'd be shocked, first of all, if they messed it up with Oklahoma State losing and Bama winning. It made it a lot easier for them. But, Mike Gundy's team lost in a heartbreaker. Sorry, what can you do? You're at the goal line twice and you didn't score, so you're out. You have Cincinnati winning their conference championship. You have Michigan winning, beating the brakes off of Iowa, and of course you have Bama beating Georgia. So I like the four that are there. What I have a problem with is why Bama jumped to the one spot. My argument is that Alabama losing to A&M and having a close game with Arkansas and a dismal performance against Auburn in the Iron Bowl, you're not sure how they can jump Michigan, especially after Michigan's dominant win against Iowa and with their win against Ohio State. So that's my only problem, but from the rest, they got it right.
Yeah, I would agree with the most part. I can see your point on Alabama, but I kind of feel like the committee's always thinking in terms of what's an interesting story for their games, and I think maybe them thinking that if we put Cincinnati in 4 and Bama at 1, that can be an interesting Cinderella dynamic in that game. Gabe?
Right.
I like what they've done. I like the Cinderella thing that they've set up. I mean, like, if Cincy wins, that'd be amazing. Like, that would be all-time legendaries.
Agree with that. Like, if Cincinnati won this game, it would be amazing. Like, this is the type of thing you make a movie about. I'm not being hyperbolic. Like, this is something we would talk
This
about.
is
Like,
the last
like when we're 75, well, that's a different documentary. That's another story. But like, this is the thing we would be talking about when we're all 75 years old, sitting
Cincy,
on a porch somewhere, and we're talking about Cincinnati in 2020. New Year's Eve is when the game. So 2021 still, not 2022 just yet. But moving on, one thing that was a topic of discussion throughout the entire year was whether or not this would be the final year where the playoff expanded, and it didn't happen. And Big 12 Commissioner Bob Bowlesby says it's not happening anytime soon just because of Texas moving to the SEC along with Oklahoma and a bunch of other variables. But I think that's kind of frustrating because really more teams should get an opportunity. And given the amount of good 2-loss teams we had this year, specifically Baylor, Oklahoma State, and Ohio State, I would have liked to see them in the playoffs. So is it time to expand? Gabe?
It definitely is. Expanding the playoffs would give college football more of that any given Sunday energy where there's parity and you don't know who can win and where you feel like every team has a chance. And just giving programs that historically haven't had a shot, giving them hope is really all they need in order to have an amazing season.
You're absolutely right about that. The reason the NFL and specifically March Madness, that's what I always kind of compare the college football playoff to, is you want the possibility that anybody can win the championship any given year. And right now, it does kind of feel like with just having 4 teams, it kind of makes the rich richer and poor poorer.
We already know who's going to win.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably going to be Alabama, Georgia, or whoever wins the Big Ten.
No, I agree with you, Clark and Gabe. The playoff has been extremely, let's say, consistent with the type of teams that they're in. I would love for the playoff to expand to a 12-team playoff. I know it's not going to happen anytime soon, but it does create more parity, more of a Cinderella story, and just like March Madness, it would engage just a ton of more fans and schools, like Group of 5 schools like Cincinnati and Pac-12 teams like Utah and Oregon, who had pretty solid seasons this year. And of course, like we mentioned, Baylor, Oklahoma State, Notre Dame, Ohio State. So, while it's disappointing that we don't have a 12-team playoff, I hope it is coming soon.
I'd love to see a 12-team playoff as well, just because it's like the NFL, and seeing maybe like a 12 seed make a run to the national championship would be really cool. But unfortunately, we're going to have to wait for that. But one thing we don't have to wait for is the Heisman Trophy, which is coming up soon. There are a ton of good candidates this year: Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Kenneth Walker, Desmond Ridder, just to name a few. Who do you think should win the Heisman? Harrison?
I think this is an easy question. I think it's got to be Bryce Young. The Heisman Award is a quarterback's award, unfortunately. And Alabama, well, right now they're the number 1 team in the country. And Bryce Young just had a historical game in the SEC Championship. I think everybody has got to give it to Bryce Young.
Bryce Young did have that sweet drive against Auburn, too, with a minute 43 in the Iron Bowl, no timeouts. But I kind of see Gabe, you're smirking a little bit. You're not going to say Bryce Young, are you?
I'm not. There's so many positions on the field, and everybody contributes, and to limit the award to just one position just isn't fair. You know, if we look at Kenneth Walker's season, he put the team on his back. At 5'10", at 5'10", 210 pounds, that man had 263 carries for almost 2,000 yards. He had 1,636 yards, averaging 6.2 yards per carry. He was the offense. He scored 18 touchdowns. And to disregard that work simply because he's a running back just isn't fair.
Yeah, you know what? This kind of brings an interesting point, too, is the Heisman really has become so quarterback biased that it really should not be called the Heisman anymore. It should be called best quarterback. I almost think you should find a way to split up the awards to maybe a defensive Heisman as well, because I know I keep talking about him, but Jordan Davis, the impact he has on that defensive line makes him one of the single most valuable players in college football. So personally, I think Bryce Young is going to win, even though Kenneth Walker is an awesome player, but him, you know, being on Bama and being the quarterback gives him just a slight edge, and I think the committee who votes on the Heisman is just biased towards that, unfortunately. And now, moving on to some important news that we talked about in college football. I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. There's a coach. He used to coach at Oklahoma. He beat Texas a lot. His name's Lincoln Riley. Yeah, he moved to USC in a shocking move. Now there were rumors that he was actually interested in the LSU job, but USC went all in, giving him a $110 million contract, which makes him the highest paid coach in all the sport. So given that, there's high expectations, and USC hasn't been very good in a long time. Gabe, do you think Lincoln Riley's going to win right away at USC, or it'll take some time?
No, not right away. We know the current state of the program. It's going to take time to bring in new recruits. It's going to take time to establish a culture. You know, whenever you bring a new coach in, he also has to fill out the room and sort of try to dissect the problems, what's been plaguing the team for so long. So you have to give him time, give him a year or two. Don't rush it. Don't do what's happening at UT with Sark. Like, give the man time and let him do his job.
You're absolutely right on that, because, listen, even though Lincoln Riley is a great coach and I think he's an offensive mastermind, USC was really bad this year. They were 5-7, and they have talented players, but they just don't have a cohesiveness yet about them. And even though Lincoln Riley is a great coach, that Oklahoma program was set up for him by Bob Stoops. He's never built a program himself, so he's facing a new challenge. Harrison.
That's a good point, Clark. As you say, like, Bob Stoops really set the foundation for Lincoln Riley to come in, and he didn't really need to implement his own culture or his own system. So this is a new challenge for him. That said, I don't know if Lincoln Riley will win actually in like his first 3 years. You have to give him time, especially at USC. I think USC, similar to UT, is a broken program. There's some attitudes, there's some cocky players, there's tough boosters and alumni. So I think it's going to be a really tough job for Lincoln Riley, but he is the man. He is the man for the job. I know UT fans especially are happy to see him go, so they don't see him every year playing. But give him time, just like Gabe said, and I think Lincoln Riley will eventually turn USC into a powerhouse once again.
Yeah, I think it is going to take some time, but it's hard not to look at the recruiting in California, since there's a lot of good players, and Lincoln Riley's pedigree, to think that he will eventually win a Pac-12 championship and will eventually win a national championship. We'll see, though. Winning a national championship is going to be tough there. And speaking of tough, Texas might have to be recruiting a new quarterback this offseason, because Quinn Ewers, who you may remember that name from a couple years ago, he committed to Texas. He was the #1 overall player in the country. According to Rivals Recruiting Service, he was the second highest rated quarterback prospect ever, only behind Trevor Lawrence, but he decided to flip from Texas and sign at Ohio State instead. But he didn't play it all last year, because C.J. Stroud is pretty good at football. So Ewers has entered his name in the transfer portal once again, and he's reportedly interested in Texas, Texas A&M, and Texas Tech. So given his interest in the Longhorns, should Sark and company make a really hard push for him? Harrison.
I think that you have to. You look at the year that Texas Longhorns just had. They went 5-7. They didn't know who their quarterback was at the start or at the end of the year. They were flipping between Hudson Card and Casey Thompson in between what almost seemed like every game of the year. So you have to go hard for Quinn Ewers. He once committed to UT. He can again. He's a generational talent, like you said. He was on 247 Sports. He was as perfect rating, just like Vince Young. And I think Quinn Ewers is a generational talent. Like he's a Patrick Mahomes arm talent. And this is the type of guy that will lead UT's turnaround. Why should he go to UT? Well, he has Bijan Robinson and Xavier Worthy. He has Steve Sarkisian, a quarterback guru. And you talk about the NIL deals at Texas. He made $1 million at Ohio State. He's going to make a lot more at Texas.
Yeah, he's getting a lot of NIL deals, and there is a lot of talent at Texas with Xavier Worthy and Bijan Robinson in the backfield, and he does have a really strong arm. Gabe.
You know, he isn't going to be the magic solution to solve all of Texas's problems, but he certainly would help. And what would be better is to make sure that the other schools in Texas don't get him. Even though Casey played well, I don't believe Hudson played well, but Casey passed the eye test. Casey did his job as best as he could. Just getting him on our team would make the program so much better that we have to go ahead and go and recruit him.
And you're absolutely right, Gabe. And the thing that you got to remember with Casey is the hand injury was a problem, and that's the reason he struggled. But I think another thing you have to consider as well is, getting Ewers is just good for the brand because it kind of shows that Texas is relevant in recruiting. Exactly, you're relevant in recruiting once again. So we'll see if he comes here. If he does for the Longhorns, though, it's definitely going to make next year really interesting in that quarterback room with Card, Casey, and even Malik Murphy, who's coming in next year, all competing for the starting job.
You know, they say iron sharpens iron, so having that much talent in one locker room would only make the team better.
Exactly. And that's what the Denver Broncos actually used in their Super Bowl run. And that was a bit of trivia. And that's what our next block is all about. We're testing out if Gabe and Harrison know all the answers to my questions. See you soon. You won't want to miss it. Welcome back to our show, and it's time for, right, you guys love the trivia. That's your favorite block on here, right?
Definitely.
Okay. Well, at TSTV, as you know, we have a huge budget, and we got the Christmas budget, baby, so we got some goodies for the panelists today. I'm not going to reveal what they are just because that's kind of a part of the Christmas lingo, but they'll definitely get some sweet stuff if they get the questions right. So let's start at the top. Now, Michigan is in the college football playoff this year, and if they win and Alabama wins, they'll possibly play each other in the national championship. One game that was a classic was the 2000 Orange Bowl between Alabama and Michigan, where the Wolverines prevailed by 1 point. Who was the quarterback for the Wolverines in that game? He's really good. He's a Hall of Famer. A lot of Super Bowls.
Tom Brady, come on. Let's go.
Bingo.
That's one.
Gabe, I know you were about to say it, but yes, it was Tom Brady. And hang on, we'll get. So here's what we got for you, Harrison.
What's in here?
We got some candy canes.
Oh, nice.
And
Thank you. Yes.
yeah, it's one of those things where everybody forgets kind of Tom Brady's college career because he actually wasn't that. He was good in college, but he wasn't like spectacular. Yeah. And he had that quarterback competition with Drew Henson, but definitely when he beat Alabama in the 2000 Orange Bowl, that was his crowning achievement. We're going to stick with Michigan, and they're playing Georgia. That relates to the next question. It's been a long time since these two teams have played. When was the last time they played?
Michigan and Georgia.
Michigan and Georgia. I'm going to give you guys a hint. It's 1 year removed from 1966.
1965?
67.
Harrison again.
Come on, that's my mom's birth year. Let's go. That's why I picked it.
Okay, so 1965 was the last time these two played. The Dogs beat Michigan 15-7. That's a low-scoring game. That's probably what the college football playoff result might be. 15-7 in Ann Arbor. So Harrison, you're getting candy cane.
They've only played twice, right? Michigan and Georgia?
Yeah, they've played twice. The first time they played was in 1957. So pretty rare sight to see these two teams going at it. That's usually how it is with the Big Ten and SEC, though they don't play each other a lot in the regular season. Moving on to the third question. Now, there's been a lot of controversy over Brian Kelly's move to LSU, just completely ditching Notre Dame. But people forget he ditched Notre Dame a long time ago. He ditched another school for Notre Dame about 12 years ago in 2009. Here's a hint. They're in the college football playoff. They're one of the 4 teams.
It's got to go to Georgia.
No.
Oh. Michigan.
No.
Oh, so Cincy?
Gabe got it. He said Cincy. There you go. Gabe getting on the board. Yes. Since Brian Kelly was the first coach to get Cincy to an undefeated regular season in the modern era, but he completely bailed on them in 2009. Here you go. When they had the Sugar Bowl against Tim Tebow in his final game. Kelly didn't coach at all, and he kind of did a similar thing with LSU. So
Yeah, so he just leaves. Okay.
yeah, we're not surprised at this point.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next question. Now, the two teams who played in the first college football playoff national championship and the NCAA tournament championship are the same teams, the same schools. So I'm going to allow you guys to register that for the second. Which two schools are they?
Wait, first playoff?
Yeah, first NCAA playoff championship and first NCAA tournament championship. They're the exact same schools.
Florida State and Oregon?
Oregon's one of them.
Oh, that was the wrong. Okay. Oregon with Marcus Mariota, right? And
But a championship game.
yeah.
That was the first semifinal.
Ohio State? Was that? No.
Yes.
It was? Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Harrison
All right.
getting
Nice.
the points. Dude, you're killing it with all the candy canes.
Yeah,
But-
thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, in 1939, Oregon and Ohio State actually played each other in the first NCAA tournament championship. And in 2014, history repeated itself with the national championship game when Ezekiel Elliott and company took care of business against the Ducks.
Yeah.
Final question. I'll be surprised if either one of you gets this. This is a really hard question, and I'm going to have to give you a lot of hints. When did Texas win their first bowl game? First ever bowl game. I'll give you.
That's tough. I'm gonna go with
It's in the 40s.
I'm gonna go with 1948.
47,
You're closer.
46,
Close.
45.
Gabe, you got it. Sorry, I had to help him out. I'm
it's all
just,
good.
yeah. Yes, 1945. Texas, so the bowl system is really complicated. The modern system really started in the 40s after World War II, but Texas won their first bowl game in 1945, 40-27 in the Cotton Bowl against Missouri.
Yeah,
You guys
good question.
you guys did a pretty good job. Gabe with 2, Harrison with 3, but it's the Christmas season, so we're in the mood for giving. So we all get one of these.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm gonna take that candy king because I didn't get any. You got some chocolate in here, some good stuff. Here you go, Gabe.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna keep that candy cane too. I'm gonna pass those out later. Got a candy cane as well, and also there's one for y'all for our master control room. So I'll get that to you as soon as the show ends. But we're in the final stretch, and we will let you know our picks for the playoff and all the New Year's Six Bowls. Stick around, you won't want to miss it. Welcome back, and it's the moment you've all been waiting for, where we reveal our college football playoff picks, as well as the picks for all the big bowl games. So let's get right into it, starting off with Michigan State and Pittsburgh in the Peach Bowl. Either one of you can jump in.
Oh, Michigan. I have them all the way. Michigan State. I mean, Kenneth is going to run all over them. He really reminds me of Jonathan Taylor, the way his feet move. His feet are just excellent. Then he can also run through you while also running around you and by you. He's going to carry them against a suspect Pittsburgh defense.
He's definitely an all-around back, and Pitt's defense hasn't really been tested yet since they've always been facing ACC offenses. Harrison.
I agree. I think Kenneth Walker and Michigan State win they win big. Michigan State has had a great year, especially after beating Michigan, and so Michigan State.
Yeah, I think the Big Ten is just much stronger than the ACC as a conference, and Michigan State has shown signs of brilliance. They beat Michigan earlier this year. Kenneth Walker is an absolute stud. Even though I do like Kenny Pickett, I just don't think Pittsburgh's physical enough to contend with the Spartans. Now, moving on to the grand daddy of them all, the Rose Bowl, Ohio State and Utah. Who wins this one?
Ohio State. They're just far more battle tested. They've had a harder schedule, and they're ready to go.
I think Ohio State too. They have the best quarterback. They have C.J. Stroud, and I think Ohio State. They didn't have a great year, even though they're in the Rose Bowl. But I think they definitely want to end the season strongly, and they're going to beat Utah in the biggest game.
Utah has a lot of momentum right now, so I think this game's actually going to be pretty close, but the Ohio State University will take this one because C.J. Stroud is one of the best players in the country. Moving on, Notre Dame with new coach Marcus Freeman. Can they rally against the Oklahoma State Cowboys?
I just don't see it. I feel bad for them. Brian Kelly leaving, and Oklahoma State with a heartbreaking game against Baylor. I see Oklahoma State getting up for this one and winning in the Fiesta Bowl. Coach Mike Gundy, this is arguably his biggest game of his season besides the last game. So I like Oklahoma State here.
You know, when the coach quits, it's reflective of the locker room on some level, and the damage that it does to team morale, there's just no way you can come back from that. I have Oklahoma State winning.
Yeah, it's really hard when the coach just bail. I always hate when that happens too. The coach just bails on his team before the bowl game. So I'd love to see Notre Dame win this game just because I thought it was kind of crude the way Brian Kelly did it, but I'm going to take Oklahoma State in this one. This is going to be a fun one. The Big 12 champions Baylor versus Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl.
Yesterday, Baylor showed their heart. They showed that they're a team that can't be messed with, and they're going to keep that momentum going on to the next game.
Yeah, they did show their heart and their momentum, especially beating Oklahoma State in a huge game at Cowboys Stadium. But I like Matt Corral and Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin. He's going to dial it up, and it's just, first of all, it's just really great to see Ole Miss back in playing in a big game. So give me Ole Miss here.
This is a tough one because I think Matt Corral is the best quarterback prospect in this year's draft, but I think Baylor has more momentum, especially playing in a conference championship game. Also defensively, they've looked really strong the last couple games, especially with those goal line stands against Oklahoma State. I'm going to take the Bears in the upset. Now, moving on to the playoff, and we're going to start with Alabama and Cincinnati in the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah, we all know Cincinnati, they're going to blow Alabama out of the water. I'm predicting it to be about 40-0 at halftime.
Aw,
like
come on,
They might
Gabe.
get mercy rule, something like that. But no. All jokes aside, Bama is blowing them out. If you compare the schedules, you know that Bama's schedule's been far harder than Cincy's, so there's just no way Cincy stands a chance.
Yeah, I know. I think Bama wins, and I think we all hope that it's going to be a close game, but Alabama, you give Nick Saban extended time. There's a reason why he's the best coach of all time. That extended time for game planning, I think Alabama is definitely going to beat Cincinnati by multiple touchdowns. What are your thoughts, Clark?
Big Cincy guy?
I'm going to pick the upset here, just because, not because it's an emotional thing at this point, because I know Alabama's probably the better team, but all you need in college football is one game. And one thing I think that could be a problem for Alabama is they really haven't faced an elite quarterback yet. Desmond Ridder is an elite quarterback, trust me. He's an NFL-type player. I think he's going to make some big throws, and it'll be a close game. And I want to be like 75 years old and talking about the time when I saw Cincinnati upset Alabama. So maybe I'll be wrong, but hopefully we could see that. Moving on to Georgia and Michigan. Who do you guys got in this one?
Georgia all the way. Georgia's defense, they know the task ahead of them, and we all know that defense wins championships. Georgia has this one in the bag.
I think it's got to be Michigan. This is Coach Harbaugh's year. This is Michigan's year. Give me Michigan and Alabama. Good. Go Blue. Come on now.
All right. Well, that means I have to be the judge. I have to be the judge. I have to split this. This is really hard just because I like Michigan. I think they are a team that's just as good as Georgia, but I think Georgia does want one more shot in the national championship just to prove it's their year and they can finally get the monkey off their back. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I got Georgia winning 20-17. So.
All right, good take.
And who wins? Real quick, who wins the national championship?
Thoughts?
Bama.
Yeah, I think Bama beats Michigan in the finals.
Well, I can't say Bama technically because I did pick Cincinnati, so I have to say Georgia, but Bama probably should be the favorite to win.
Cincinnati's not going to win at all?
Oh, well, we'll see.
Cinderella's?
That would be interesting because Cincinnati played Georgia in the Peach Bowl last year, so if they did play Georgia, that would be a revenge game for them, so we'll see. But only time will tell if I got my picks right. Thank you. And also, before we leave today, everybody have a happy holidays, have a safe time, have safe trips, have safe vacations, just stay safe throughout the holidays, but also have some fun as well. And we hope your 2022 is even better than 2021. For Gabe and Harrison, thank you so much for joining today. And for me, that's a wrap for today's show. Thank you for watching.